Alright, so I'm going to rebuild the master cylinder. I soaked the master cylinder in WD-40 rust remover, and it came out pretty clean. Used this brush to get inside, try to clean it out the best I can. If you remember, the bypass port was completely blocked in here. I had to drill it out, but it came out pretty nice. Probably throw some paint on it, but I'm going to wait till after I put it together because I'll be getting brake fluid on it, and brake fluid lifts paint. So this is a couple of things I noticed about the rebuild kit. There's two rebuild kits. One is for power brakes and one is for manual brakes. This car has power brakes, so there's a little bit of a difference in the kits. The manual brake, you get this check valve. In the power brake kit, you don't get this check valve, so I have to use the old check valve. Now this spring came with the kit. It's a lot longer than what came out of the car, and this plate on the end doesn't have a hole in it, and this one does. So I'm going to set that new spring aside. I don't think there's anything wrong with this spring. I mean, it's a mechanical thing. I soaked this and some of the other small parts in purple power, and then put them in the ultrasonic cleaner and buzzed them a couple of times, and took them out, rinsed them off, and then washed them all off with alcohol to clean them up, make them get rid of any residual cleaner or soap on them. But I took a needle, a pin rather, and I used the head of the pin, not the point for obvious reasons, but the head of the pin, pushed it in these holes, and I can feel the material in there. It's like a flapper, like a rubber or some type of, not sure what it's made out of, neoprene or whatever it is. But anyway, by pushing on it lightly with the head of the pin, I can feel it moving. So I think this check valve will be fine. I'm soaking everything in clean brake fluid. Another thing in the rebuild kit, I did not get this rubber washer. This rubber washer goes against the check valve, which goes against the head nut on the end of the master cylinder. But I'll show you all that when I start putting it together. Now, according to the shop manual tells me to put the head nut in first and then load everything in from this side. But I think that's going to be a problem because in the end I'm going to have the piston in there and the spring in there, which together we're talking that much length in parts. And the last part of the operation is to put this stop plate in, the push rod in, and the stop plate. I'd have to compress it and then try to pop this snap ring in place to hold it. And I just don't see where that's going to happen. So I'm going to try to load this thing from the other direction, and I'm going to put the stop plate in first. This would normally be the last thing to go in because I'd have all my components already in, but I'm going to try something a little different. Go ahead and just wet everything a little. Also, I put down this plastic to keep from getting brake fluid on my truck because, as everybody knows, brake fluid will remove paint. Don't want that to happen. Still fighting me a little bit. Alright, so I had to get a hammer, tap it, persuade it, but it popped down in there pretty easy. I don't want to bounce this thing around because I've got the cylinder all honed out real nice and I don't want to scratch it up. So now I'm going to try to load this thing from the other direction. And here's what it looks like with the push rod and the stop plate and this retainer spring in. Alright, so working my way, beginning at the push rod and coming forward. First thing is going to be the, I think this is the secondary cup, and the piston goes in first. And this indented area is going to receive the end of the push rod, so that's the way that goes. I'm going to put a little brake fluid in there. Make sure I keep this off of my truck. Alright, pushed it in nice and squarely. And the next thing is the primary cup. And the primary cup's got this washer on it too, which is bonded to the new one. It was not bonded to the old one. And I've got to make sure that I put it going the correct direction, which is the cup out facing upwards. Put that in nice and squarely too. Then the next piece is the spring, and this end of the spring goes into the cup. The check valve is on the other end of the spring. Make sure everything's wet. Alright, and then the next thing that goes in is this rubber washer. You can actually see the old indentation of the round part of the cup of the check valve. I'm going to put it in the exact same way. And then the head nut goes on, and it has a copper crush washer. I think that was a lot easier than trying to load it from this way and compress all those components and try to get the push rod in and the stop plate and the spring clip all in. I would have needed 4 hands. Tighten that up later. I got to go get the washer for this, but this is the cover. And on this master cylinder, if you recall, there's a remote filler. So there's a remote filler tube that goes in here and goes up and mounts to the firewall. But that's basically it. I mean, and of course this boot pops on the end. I'll have to take the clevis off, obviously, to get the boot on there. Well, just go ahead and do it. Before I took this thing apart, I measured how much threads were showing. Of course, I can't remember now, but I got it written down. Alright, that's going to need a little work. But anyway, you get the point. Yeah, so that was the hardest part of the whole operation, getting the rubber boot on. I think that's right about where the adjusting threads were showing. And then here's the pin, clevis pin. So we're all rebuilt. Ready to go back in. I think I will wipe it down with some alcohol, let it dry, and throw a little bit of paint on it just to keep it from rusting.